Welcome to the Fantasy Football Hub YouTube channel. Today I'm joined by Holly Shand to have a look at Fantasy Football Hub's AI team. That is our FPL team run solely by AI. Have a look back at last week and then have a look forward to next week and see how the team is looking. And Holly, I just want to come straight out and say it. It's probably one of the worst weeks, maybe of any fantasy team I've ever seen. And it's a shame because I really like this AI team, but yeah, it didn't do very well, did it?
No, the haters are going to be loving it in the comments, aren't they? Just the one attacking return, an assist from Saka and blanks elsewhere. So yeah, pretty shocking week. And, a lot of that international break rotation really hit us as well. Players losing their spots. Muniz with a 1-pointer, Harwood Bellis off the bench with a 1-pointer, Vardiol off the bench with a 1-pointer. Bookings for our Liverpool fullbacks with Robertson, the new addition, and Salah captain, let us down. Haaland did the damage, of course.
Yeah, obviously just not a good week for no Haaland teams in general. But then you need, if you don't have Haaland, if you didn't have Haaland this week, you needed other players to really step up in his absence. And yeah, Robertson's the one. That is one that the AI has been pretty hot on for a while now. And ahead of those two planned fixtures, Forest and then obviously Bournemouth this week, looked like a great transfer in, but didn't work out. Yeah, the transfers as a whole didn't really work out. And moving ahead now to next week, there's quite a few flags in the team, right? It's not looking great. What are you thinking with the team just in general? Just looking at it as someone that's, it's not your team, it's the AI's team. If you were in a head-to-head game against it, would you be worried?
I had a look through, I compared this to the AI Wildcard Team, and there are 6 players common across the starting 11. So it's not an absolute disaster, but I think like many of us, we're looking at our forward lines and we've got ISAK flagged, we've got J.PEDRO flagged, we've also got De Bruyne that got flagged. It's been a brutal week in terms of injuries and, a busy midweek as well with lots of players and teams in action in the League Cup and Champions League. It was bound to happen. But yeah, I think most managers are in the same boat of things looking a little bit threadbare this week in terms of the fringes of the squad. And we are planning on a wild card in game week 6, which will hopefully solve a lot of the problems around the edges of the squad. But yeah, this is kind of like a week where you kind of need to survive, ride it out, and hopefully be in a strong position going into the wild card in game week 6.
Let's talk about the flags first of all in this team because a lot of the players in this team are popular picks. ISAK, J.PEDRO, for example, both in my squad. De Bruyne as well with the flag. What do we know so far? I mean, we're not going to make any transfers in this video. The transfers are always made by Holly late, very close to the deadline. Or is it 4 o'clock on Friday roughly that you do them?
Yeah, so obviously all the AI predictions fluctuate coming off the manager's press conferences. There's 4 or 5 taking place on Thursday and then the rest on Friday. So that information then feeds into the predictions, which then feeds into the AI team to help navigate those moves. So yeah, the final article and moves are on Fantasy Football Hub at 4 o'clock on a Friday. But in terms of what we know so far, obviously we saw ISAK subbed at half-time with an eye injury. It's also been out in the press on Thursday that he has a toe injury as well. So two injuries v1 make me a little more skeptical about his minutes potential. It sounds like he didn't train on Wednesday either. So yeah, that is becoming more of a concern. And then J.PEDRO, it was a bit of a shock to see him left out in game week 4. It turns out he picked up a knock during the international break with Brazil, an international break he wasn't meant to be taking part, but then had a late call up. He obviously missed the midweek game then in the League Cup for Brighton, but that wasn't a surprise really because why risk a player in, not a Premier League game? So I think the jury's out. Obviously, we'll hear from Hersler on Friday with some firm news. It's looking 50-50 at the moment. You couldn't really call it. And then the De Bruyne situation, it's hard to know what's going on here. Obviously, he started against Milan in the Champions League, picked up a knock quite close to half-time and was subbed. Some thought that it was the knock that caused the sub, but Guardiola has said in an interview that it was a tactical decision because City was struggling to really get those chances that they wanted down that flank for De Bruyne. I mean, you never know with Guardiola whether he's telling you the truth or not. I think either way, it's probably not that good news for De Bruyne with the likes of Foden coming back, Gundogan as well. There's strength and depth there. But yeah, Champions League is going to be very different to the Arsenal game. And you could read between the lines and think, well, if De Bruyne had a little bit of a knock, Guardiola wasn't going to continue to risk him with Arsenal at the weekend, which could be a huge game in the context of the title this season ultimately.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Looking at the team, it still looks okay, but obviously there are some weaknesses here. I would say this team definitely does need a wild card in the next week or so, depending on how flags go. We're going to have a look at the best Game Week 5 wildcard team, just in case your team does have a lot of flags like this and we do get some bad sort of news later on in the week with press conferences, as Holly alluded to, that may be forcing your hand. So stick around for that. But right now, I want to jump into the recommendation for this team, the AI recommendation for this team. Obviously, this is at the time recording. So as Holly said, the predicted minutes and therefore the predicted points will all change dependent on what we hear in the press conferences. But for now, let's get into this team's AI recommended transfer. Okay, so here we go. This is the transfer on screen, and I kind of like it. Even though it's only going to be for 1 week, most likely. It's one that was recommended to Jonas as well, or at least the player coming in was recommended to Jonas in Chris Wood. But this time it's for Muniz, who has seemingly been dropped, and not only dropped. Jimenez scored after starting that game. So his start looks very, very debatable, and Wood has had a really good start to the season.
Yeah, so in the case of Muniz, obviously there was always going to be that threat from Jimenez, so we anticipated the early substitutions throughout the early phase of the season, but the fact that he hasn't managed to register an attacking return, the writing is on the wall now. Jimenez started and scored. Muniz was the club cup striker midweek as well. So you think that place is Jimenez now. So, I'm personally kind of expecting a 1-pointer from Muniz this week. I'd be very surprised if it's anything different. You look at Chris Ward away at Brighton, predicted to score 5.5 points. That transfer has absolutely got the potential to pay off in the short term, even if it is 1 week before the wild card. And the thing with Chris Wood is a player that we've been looking at for a while, but it didn't really come to fruition as being fully nailed on to start until after the transfer window closed, because we was expecting Forest to bring in another striker. They haven't. Chris Wood have scored 2 goals this season from 5 big chances. He is prone to an early sub as well, but while he's in form, I think, he can keep Awoniyi at bay in terms of that starting berth. So the fixtures are there, the form's there. I think he's a very solid pick. I look at, the types of forwards that managers are looking at the minute, the Calvert-Lewins, the Vardys of the world, big rotation risks, very injury prone. I think Chris Wood is, a very solid pick in comparison to those two.
Yeah, that's the debate. It's if you want to chase upside this week in particular, and I had this exact debate with Jonas, last year's FPL winner, on yesterday's video, and he said that he was willing to go for upside. But yeah, if you're looking at the sort of the data pick, probably would be Wood here. So let's make the transfer. Let's see how the team looks after doing that, just to give some sort of insight into how that affects things. And again, it's still not looking amazing, but it definitely looks stronger. Harwood Bellis then drops to the bench. A team rating of 97% is super, super strong. If any of you guys out there have a team rating of 97% or more, then get in the comments down below. Let me know your team, because it's looking good. The gaming rating is a little bit less than you'd hope, but there are some tougher fixtures, and obviously the flags are affecting things. But yeah, that is the team for this week. One final word on captaincy as well. Do you think, Holly, that this team has the best captain this week? According to predicted points, it does.
Yeah, that's the main thing, isn't it? I think, I mean, to be fair, Haaland could absolutely blow Salah out of the water again, given his current form. But it's nice to be on the optimal captain pick this week, rather than it being Haaland and us not owning him. And hopefully, come next game week, Haaland will be in the team when we play the wild card.
Well, I'll have to wait and see. Who knows? All right. Okay, so that is the team for this week. Now let's have a little look at the best Game Week 5 wildcard team according to AI. So here is the team on screen. It's looking very strong. This is it for Game Week 5. wildcard. Now, obviously, this team does change based on everything we've said so far as well. But right now, time of recording, if you are on a Game Week 5 wildcard, or as I said, if you're looking at potentially going towards it based on injuries and if the presses don't go our way, this does look pretty strong. So Verbruggen in goal, rotating with Flecken, which I quite like, to be fair. That rotation is excellent. I think if I was on a Game Week 6 wildcard, I'd probably just go with Flecken. But this week, it is appealing to potentially go with both. Let's start there just with the goalkeepers. They're going for rotating keepers, Holly.
Yeah, and I think when you don't have Haaland in the side, it affords you to be able to do things like this. And what we've noticed from the overall predictions is that Flecken has suddenly come up to be the best 4.5 million goalkeeper in the game. So he looks like a great pick now. Brentford's fixtures obviously definitely improve come game week 6 onwards as well. So we can ride with that pick for a while.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the defence. That Liverpool double up is still there. I think the thing with a 5 wildcard and why people aren't looking at it, but then they may be forced into it because of injury, is because it does affect sort of the long-term picks a little bit more. I'm not sure I'd have a double up on a Game Week 6 wildcard on the Liverpool defenders, but Bournemouth at home is pretty tough not to have 2 Liverpool defenders. Obviously, they had that blip, but before that, they've been immaculate. So yeah, they're both in. And then the interesting one is Faz is actually starting here, but Gabriel is on the bench ready to come in for that run of great fixtures with Greaves as well.
Yeah, and then this is one thing that's important to note is that these 4 million defenders that we've got in the game this season can do the business for us and come in when we've got tougher fixtures. I mean, personally, I feel like that City-Arsenal game could be any score. I mean, you could get a 0-0.
Yeah.
It will go one of two ways, won't it? But yeah, exactly. That double Liverpool defence looks great for now. But you look at the predictions for defenders in the long term, and we're seeing Arsenal assets and Vardiol starting to overtake Robertson and Trent now in the pecking order. So we will see a shift in these defensive options because the fixtures are so closely linked to their potential, whereas you don't get that so much with attacking players because they are more fixture proof when it comes to FPL points.
Okay, so yeah, a little bit more. Well, I mean, it's still pretty strong, really, in terms of budget in the defense. But I do, again, I like the fact that the AI team has always gone with very cheap 4 million defenders from Game Week 1. Still has that now, really. I know Faz has risen a tiny bit. But for managers potentially looking for more sort of budget options, if they don't want to spend that much money on 3 sort of premiums in defence, who are the best sort of 4-5 to 5 million players in for a Game Week 5 wildcard?
Yeah, so Moreno's top of the list of those priced under 5 million, which is an interesting one. Yeah.
I pick a lot.
Probably going under the radar as well. Then we've got Luke Dean is coming in quite strongly as well.
So let's move swiftly on. If you know, you know.
And then we've got some Brentford defenders, Azure and Collins. I guess if Flecken's going to be your main goalkeeper each week, you may not want to double up on the Brentford defence with a defender as well. And we've also got Keane at Everton. 4 million is the best of the 4 million assets in his own right. But as we can see in this team, you're far better going with 2 4 million options that rotate than the one.
Ah, yes. I didn't even think about the rotation between those two if you need it. Yeah, I mean, someone like an Aina or a Moreno, I think is almost nailed on my wildcard whenever that happens. Again, it's one of those that doesn't necessarily lend itself to this week in particular. Not the easiest fixture, but they're unbeaten. Forest, they're looking phenomenal defensively. Their underlying numbers from last year are now, I guess, coming to fruition. They just look great. But yeah, I think Moreno or Aina are great picks. Okay, let's move on to the midfield. And it's a very, very strong midfield. Obviously, yeah, the main talking point here is no Haaland once again, which is crazy to me, but we'll get onto that when we get to the forwards. But the midfield, I don't really have any questions over any of them. I guess the one thing you could argue is with Rodgers, he hasn't got an attacking return yet. Is that going to keep up? Is obviously he looks like great value at 5.1, but you have to get some returns at some point to be good value. And then with Palmer as well, it's slightly underperforming his price, I would say, so far.
Yeah, it's difficult to know with Palmer whether he's the same Palmer that we saw last season, but given that he's had like a few little niggles and this Chelsea like optimal lineup is only beginning to settle down under a new manager, like, it's hard to really make that review after just 4 game weeks of information. But yeah, the AI absolutely loves Eze still, even though he's maybe, not first choice in his own right on penalties, but sharing with Mateta. Interestingly, when I looked at this wildcard team on Wednesday, Saka was flagged with injury, since been declared fit to play in the Champions League. And at that point, the AI wildcard was preferring the
Ah,
Haaland
okay.
team. So it just goes to show how close Haaland is
Right.
to this current team. And I think, next week that things are going to swing in Haaland's favour. But yeah, Salah's still the optimal pick for this week, and he's going to remain the optimal best midfielder in the game, probably for the whole season if he can stay fit. But yeah, you can't argue with these picks. I guess Rodgers is the one. He's got really great underlying numbers. He's basically done everything but score. Interestingly, Bailey is back fit for Villa for game week 5, so it'd be interesting to see if he comes straight back in. We've also seen a great start to the season for Villa for Duran, and whether we see an adjustment in this Aston Villa setup to accommodate Watkins and Duran in there, and how that benefits or doesn't the likes of Rodgers or Bailey, that's going to be something to monitor over the next couple of game weeks.
Yeah, I personally think that Rodgers is super safe for his minutes. I think we're seeing him play 90 minutes in pretty much every game.
Yeah.
I don't think that Duran's personally going to come into the team alongside Watkins. I think that Emery's probably delighted with the fact that he's got two strikers in Watkins. Obviously, you have a player that's just phenomenal, and Duran is in sensational form, and they have a lot of games this season, so there's a lot of minutes for both of them. We're seeing Watkins already, a couple niggles, not played fantastically at the start of the year. It's fine. Duran comes in, and I don't know. I think he's probably pretty happy knowing that he's getting 25 minutes in a Prem game and will play a lot of the midweek games, obviously with Champions League and then the League Cup going on and everything like that as well. So yeah, I think Rodgers' returns are around the corner. It's funny, like at the start of the season after those first couple of games when he looked great, I was sort of along the lines of, okay, he needs to get a return now. Whereas a lot of other people were like, no, he's great, get him in. After game week 3, I think other people were kind of thinking, okay, he needs to get a return now. And then I was like, okay, he still looks great. And now I think kind of everyone is on that same boat of he does need to get a return, but he just looks great. I think it is inevitable. Okay, let's move on to the forwards. And I want to know, because obviously you said there that Haaland is very close to this team, or a Haaland team is very close in terms of predicted points over the next X game weeks, because just one flag for Saka and then the whole team changed to allow Haaland in. I think, again, like the problem with going with this team is that it's very hard to get to Haaland after this. So you're saying, I'm not going to go for Haaland. Let's talk about Solanke, who is back in this side as well. Again, played 90 minutes last game, coming back from his absence, and then Wood is in there as well.
Yeah, and it's the fixtures this week that are altering things, else Haaland would be in, because there's 3 predicted points between Haaland and Salah right now. Obviously, Salah's got one of his best fixtures of the year at home to Bournemouth. Haaland's got one of his worst at home to Arsenal. Bring that forward a week, then Haaland's 4 points clear of Salah in the predictions, and it becomes a point where we saw the wildcard team that it was showing with Haaland yesterday did have Salah as well, and 3 rotating 4 million defenders, whereas I think a Haaland team in come game week 6 will likely to be a Haaland only, because of the kind of the swing of City's fixtures and the kind of coming to the end of the best of Liverpool's fixtures as well. Solanke's a really nice pick, and he's not a player that many managers are looking at. Obviously, he hasn't got a return so far for Spurs. He's played 90 minutes in the 2 games he has played, though, and he's looked sharp. We don't know whether he's on penalties yet. That's another question we need answering. But the fixtures are there for Spurs, and the reason why he was in so many FPL content creators teams at the start of the season is that he's been priced as a 7.5 million forward to play at Bournemouth. He's now at Spurs. He scored 19 goals last season. Like, if he can be within that realm this season, then he's going to be a bargain at that price point. So I like the confidence from the AI to get him in. He's kind of a player that I'd like to maybe see another game from, maybe another attacking return before I jump on board.
Yeah.
But yeah, don't overlook him. When people are looking at the likes of Vardy and Calvert-Lewin, I know they're a lot cheaper than Solanke, but Solanke is going under the radar and he shouldn't be.
I mean, yeah, in terms of ISAK replacements, if he's out for just 1 week, and I'm thinking, punt in preparation for game week 6, Solanke is definitely up there. 90 minutes. We don't know if he's going to be on penalties, but I think his minutes are more assured than a Vardy and a Calvert-Lewin. I know Vardy's been playing a lot recently, but just in terms of Solanke's injury record, it's sensational. Let's talk about J.PEDRO as well, finally, because he's still in the team. Obviously, he's benched as it stands with that yellow flag, but he remains in the team despite tougher fixtures, I would say, coming up.
Yeah, and I guess this is again the luxury of not having Haaland. You've got a bit of budget to spend on the bench players, so we've got a strong front 8 here. We don't know at the moment, do we, whether J.PEDRO's a starter or not? But even though he's a doubt for this game, his predicted points are still looking pretty solid. And you saw Brighton's performance last weekend against Ipswich, the 0-0 draw. That game needed J.PEDRO, and I think even though they've got so much strength and depth in their squad, like J.PEDRO is such an important player, and I think given that he's not been ruled out for a period of time, I think he should still be a serious consideration and maybe not a player to move on or back against. If you are playing a wild card in game week 5, try and find a way to have him on your bench and have that strong front 8, because I think he's going to have his time very soon.
Okay, so there we go. That is the AI's best game week 5 wildcard. Guys, let us know in the comments down below. Are you thinking of wildcarding this week? What would push you towards a wildcard? Obviously, I think game week 6 is just a better window in general to do it. I'm not sure what you think about that, Holly, but that's what most people seem to be thinking. But yeah, it's whether or not teams can get through it, or whether it's worth going a bit early this week. Okay, thank you very much, Holly, for your insight into the AI's team. Again, guys, if you do want to see what the AI ends up doing for itself, it's always a bit weird when I say that, but that's what it is. Then check out Holly's article on the website, link down below. And if you want to get AI recommended transfers for your team, like you saw in the video, or have a look at the updated best wildcard team, not just for this week, but for any week in the future, again, sign up to Fantasy Football Hub. It's still 50% off at the time of recording, so make sure you do it now. We will catch you guys on the next one. Good luck this game week.